All right, so you've brought in like a ton of stuff about Bigfoot, like interviews and stories, even some like scientific papers.
Yeah.
It's like you're putting together a whole case file for like the most mysterious creature ever.
Right?
So let's just get right into this. What's the real deal with Bigfoot? Are we talking like a missing link, some kind of interdimensional thing, or just like a really, really elaborate hoax that's been going on forever?
It's really amazing when you look at it, just how many stories there are. And they're consistent, even going back hundreds of years before the internet.
Right.
It's not just fuzzy pictures either. Like, there are really detailed descriptions of what they look like, how they act, and even possible, like, physical evidence.
Yeah. And it's not just random stuff online or like campfire stories. You know what I mean? We've
Yeah.
got like actual researchers and people who say they've seen Bigfoot, even reports from the police.
Yeah, definitely.
This isn't just like spooky stories. It really feels like people are trying to like document a real phenomenon.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting.
Yeah.
It's not about, like, jumping to conclusions, but looking at all the evidence carefully and trying to figure it out.
So before we get to like the really weird stuff, let's start with the basics. Like, what are people actually saying they're seeing out in the woods?
Okay, well, the descriptions have kind of changed over time.
Okay.
Especially in those old newspaper articles from like the 1800s, you see the term wild men a lot.
Wild men.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like something unknown to science hiding out there on the edge of civilization.
Right. And it's interesting, like around the late 1800s, when they discovered mountain gorillas in Africa, the language in these reports changed.
Oh, really?
All of a sudden, people started saying, these creatures look like gorillas.
Ah, so they were trying to like fit this unknown thing into something they already knew.
Exactly.
Like gorillas were this powerful, mysterious animal, and everyone was fascinated by them. So it was like they had a way to understand Bigfoot.
Exactly. That change in language is really important.
Yeah.
Because it shows us the main description of Bigfoot stayed the same, but people understood it based on what they knew about science at the time.
That's a really good point. It suggests that maybe there is something real out there, but we see it differently as science changes.
Right. And this historical context is really important.
Yeah.
We're not talking about some new fad.
Yeah.
These reports of big unknown primates go back centuries.
Okay, so we've got these wild men becoming gorillas over time. But where are these encounters happening? Is it all in the Pacific Northwest, like in the movies?
Actually, that's one of the most surprising things I found going through your sources.
Okay.
Pennsylvania has more Bigfoot reports than the West Coast.
Wait, seriously? Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
That's not what I expected at all. You always hear about Bigfoot in those huge forests in the Pacific Northwest. Why Pennsylvania?
It seems weird, but there are a couple of reasons.
Okay.
First, remember, in the 1800s, Pennsylvania had way more people than the West Coast.
Right.
More people means more chances of seeing something strange in the woods.
Right. More witnesses means more reports. It's just like a numbers thing.
And another thing, Pennsylvania has a really long history of newspapers going back to Benjamin Franklin.
Wow.
So those early encounters were more likely to be written down and saved in local newspapers.
So it's not that there were more Bigfoot in Pennsylvania, but that they were better at recording those encounters. It's like Pennsylvania was ahead of the game in documenting the whole Bigfoot thing.
Exactly. And going through those Pennsylvania archives is like discovering a whole secret history of Bigfoot encounters.
Yeah.
It gives us a really valuable look at how people thought about these creatures back then.
It's amazing how much we can learn from those old accounts.
Right.
They help us understand how the whole idea of Bigfoot has changed over time and how our culture and scientific discoveries have shaped it.
Absolutely. And this historical view becomes even more interesting when you compare these early reports to what people are saying today.
Okay.
You start to see some really fascinating patterns, especially in how Bigfoot behaves.
Okay, let's talk about that. Then we've all seen the blurry photos and videos, but what are people saying about how Bigfoot acts? Is it a gentle giant, a scary predator, or something even weirder?
That's when things get really interesting. The reports you've gathered cover all sorts of behavior, from shy giants, watching people from far away, to way more aggressive stuff like breaking into houses and maybe even abductions.
Hold on, breaking into houses? You mean like Bigfoot actually going inside people's homes?
There are actually quite a few stories about that.
Really?
One really vivid example is from an article in the Oakland Tribune in 1920. It describes a gorilla-like man breaking into the bedroom of two young girls in Long Beach, California.
Okay, now that's terrifying. I can't even imagine how scary that would be to wake up to something like that in your room.
The article says the girl's father ran in and saw the creature climbing out the window. He said its face was covered in long, black, shaggy hair, and it was huge and hunched over like a giant ape.
So not exactly the gentle giant you hear about sometimes.
No, not at all. And this idea of Bigfoot being dangerous is something some researchers talk about when they look at missing people in national parks.
Oh,
For example, David Politis has said that some disappearances, especially the ones that happen really fast and without a trace, might be connected to Bigfoot.
wow. That's a scary thought to think that these creatures could be responsible for some of those unsolved cases.
It's definitely a disturbing possibility, and it adds another layer to how we understand Bigfoot's behavior.
So we're seeing all kinds of behaviors from just watching to maybe being aggressive and even possible abductions. This isn't just a simple creature. There seems to be a lot more going on.
Exactly, and it makes you wonder about Bigfoot's intelligence, what it wants, and how it relates to humans. Are they just protecting their territory? Are they curious? Or is there something even more complex going on?
Those are great questions. It leads us deeper into this mystery. But before we go too far down that road, there's another thing that keeps coming up in the reports that I find really interesting. And it's not what you'd expect, rock throwing.
Yeah, rock throwing. It's definitely a theme in both old and new Bigfoot stories, and it's one of the most confusing behaviors.
Why would Bigfoot throw rocks? Is it aggression, a warning, or something else entirely?
That's the big question. It could be a way of showing they own the territory, a way of communicating, or even just playing around depending on the situation.
Hmm.
But the fact that people have been saying this for centuries suggests it's a really important part of how they act.
It's almost like their signature move, like saying, hey, we're here, and we're not afraid to let you know it.
Exactly. And it adds another layer of mystery to this already fascinating puzzle. It makes you think if throwing rocks is a way of communicating, what are they trying to say?
It's like we're trying to decode an ancient language, looking for clues in these strange and seemingly random actions. It's all part of the bigger puzzle of trying to understand Bigfoot.
Exactly. And as we dig deeper into this puzzle, you'll find even more interesting details, things that might challenge what you think you know and open your mind to possibilities you never even considered.
Okay, you've definitely got me curious. What else have you found in these reports that could help us understand this mystery?
Well,
All right, so we've got like Bigfoot sightings going way back. They're not just in the Pacific Northwest. And these creatures are doing all sorts of weird stuff.
yeah, it's really interesting.
What else is in these reports?
Well, one thing that really stands out, and you might not expect it, is how Bigfoot was described in old reports using the word gay.
Gay. That doesn't seem to fit with what we've been talking about.
I know it sounds strange now,
Yeah.
but language changes, you know? Back then, gay often meant like lighthearted or whimsical, even mischievous.
Ah, so they were saying Bigfoot was playful or even like a trickster. That's interesting.
Exactly. And there are stories of Bigfoot playing pranks on people, hiding things or copying. Sounds almost like it was messing with them.
Like a forest spirit playing tricks on people.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It adds to this idea that Bigfoot is something otherworldly, something we don't really understand. And this otherworldly aspect is even stronger when you see another detail that keeps popping up: the glowing eyes.
Oh yeah, those descriptions are always creepy. Eyes of flame, pools of blood.
Yeah.
It's like straight out of a horror movie.
Exactly. And this isn't just a modern thing. You find similar descriptions in old accounts too, so it's been there all along. Some researchers say this might point to something beyond normal biology, maybe even something paranormal.
Okay, now that's getting into some really wild territory.
Yeah.
But before we go down that rabbit hole, let's talk about the big question everyone asks about Bigfoot. Where are the bodies? If these creatures are real, why haven't we found any remains?
That's the ultimate Bigfoot mystery, isn't it? The fact that there are no bodies makes people skeptical, and it's a constant debate. There are a lot of theories out there. Some make more sense than others.
Like what are the main explanations for not finding any physical evidence?
One idea is that we're just not recognizing Bigfoot bodies when we see them. In remote areas where logging accidents happen or animals get attacked, a Bigfoot body could easily be mistaken for something else and no one would really investigate it.
So they might be out there, but we just don't know what we're looking at.
It's possible then there's the classic government cover-up theory. Some people believe the Smithsonian has been collecting and hiding Bigfoot remains for years, keeping it all secret from the public, maybe to protect us, or maybe for their own research.
The classic conspiracy theory, it's always interesting even if it's hard to prove.
Right. And then there's an even creepier possibility that Bigfoot buries its dead. If that's true, finding a body would be almost impossible.
Wow, that's a little creepy. But it makes sense a lot of primates bury their dead, so why not Bigfoot?
It fits with the idea that Bigfoot is really intelligent and social. and it makes the search for evidence even harder.
Okay, so we've got accidental deaths, government secrets, and burial rituals. Not a lot of clear answers there. But what about DNA evidence? Haven't people claimed to have analyzed Bigfoot DNA?
They have, and this is where things get really controversial. Dr. Melba Ketchum, she's a veterinarian, and a geneticist claims she has DNA evidence proving that Bigfoot is a human hybrid, a mix between us and some unknown hominid species.
A human hybrid. That's a huge claim. But I've also heard that a lot of scientists are skeptical about her findings.
That's true. Her research hasn't been widely accepted, and there's still questions about how she did it and if her results are valid.
Okay.
But it's important to remember that scientific progress often means questioning what we think we know and exploring new ideas, even if they seem strange.
Right. Sometimes the biggest discoveries come from people who think differently.
Exactly. And even though Dr. Ketchum's research is controversial, there are some interesting details. For example, at one site, they found juvenile teeth with mamelons, those little bumps on the incisors that mammals have, including humans.
Right.
This suggests that Bigfoot might live in family groups like us.
Family groups. That changes things a lot, doesn't it? We're not just talking about lone creatures wandering around. It suggests they might have social structures, maybe even a culture.
It's a fascinating idea, and it adds to the mystery. If they live in families, how do they communicate? Do they have traditions? What's their social life like?
So many questions.
Yeah.
And so few answers. But, speaking of interesting details, we can't talk about Bigfoot without mentioning the Patterson-Gimlin film. The one with the creature walking across that creek bed?
Yeah.
It's like the holy grail of Bigfoot evidence.
It is. Even after decades of analysis, arguments and accusations of faking the film is still a mystery.
Yeah.
Experts in all kinds of fields have looked at it. Some say it's just a guy in a suit. Others say it shows real primate behavior that we've never seen before.
It's like the Zapruder film of Bigfoot always debated. Why is it so hard to prove or disprove?
The footage is grainy, the lighting isn't great, and technology in 1967 wasn't what it is now.
Right.
Plus, there's that whole deathbed confession thing that makes it even more mysterious.
Wait, what's that? Tell me more.
Some people say that someone involved in the film confessed before they died that it was all staged. But no one's ever been able to prove that for sure, so it just adds another layer of mystery.
So even if it's fake, it's a really good and long-lasting fake.
Exactly. And you can't deny the impact the Patterson-Gimlin film has had on the whole Bigfoot thing. It brought the legend into the mainstream and got people really interested in searching for this creature.
It gave the myth a face, even if it's blurry, and made the idea of Bigfoot seem a bit more real.
Exactly. And that's why, even with all the controversy, the Patterson-Gimlin film is still a key part of the Bigfoot story, a symbol of the mystery and the search for answers. But remember, we've only just scratched the surface here.
Oh, I know. I'm already feeling overwhelmed with all this information, and we're only halfway through our deep dive. What else is there?
Well, we've talked about the physical stuff, the behavior, and the history, but there's another part of the Bigfoot phenomenon we haven't discussed yet, and it's probably the most interesting and mind-blowing of all the interdimensional theories.
Interdimensional theories. Okay, now you're really pushing the limits of what I can understand.
Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but just listen. There are a ton of stories about Bigfoot doing things that seem to break the laws of physics, disappearing into thin air, leaving no tracks, or even appearing and disappearing whenever it wants.
So not just a missing link, but a creature from another dimension.
That's the idea. These stories, along with that feeling people often describe of being watched or followed, have led some researchers to think that Bigfoot might not be limited by the same rules of reality that we are.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. I need a minute to process this.
Take your time. It's a lot to take in. But I think you'll find that looking into these interdimensional theories opens up a whole new world of possibilities and makes us rethink how we understand the world around us.
I'm starting to realize the deeper we go into this Bigfoot mystery, the more questions we find. It's like peeling back layers of an onion. Each layer is more intriguing and confusing than the last.
Exactly, and that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. It's not about finding all the answers. It's about enjoying the mystery and trying to make sense of something that might be beyond our understanding.
I'm ready for the challenge. So let's dive into these interdimensional theories and see where they take us.
All right, let's do it. But be warned, once you start thinking about this stuff, it's hard to stop.
All right, we're back, and my head is still spinning from all those interdimensional theories. It's like we went from looking for a missing link to, like, questioning reality itself.
It is wild, isn't it? It makes you realize that Bigfoot is about way more than just finding some creature in the woods. It's about, like, pushing the limits of what we understand and exploring the unknown.
Yeah, but let's come back down to earth for a second. We talked about all the evidence, the history, the strange behaviors, even those mind-bending theories. But there's one big thing we haven't really talked about, the ethics of finding Bigfoot.
You're absolutely right. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of searching,
Hmm.
but we need to think about what would happen if we actually found proof that Bigfoot exists. What would it mean for them, for us?
It's almost like a philosophy question.
Yeah.
What are our responsibilities to a new species, especially one that's been so mysterious and legendary?
It's a tough question with no easy answers. On the one hand, finding Bigfoot would be a huge scientific discovery, a living, breathing, missing link.
Right.
Think about it, it would change everything we know about biology, anthropology, even our own evolution.
It would be a game changer. For sure, scientists would be going crazy and everyone would be fascinated.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's another side to this.
Exactly, and it's not a good one. Some experts worry that finding Bigfoot would put them in danger.
Yeah.
People might try to capture them for research, put them in zoos, or even hunt them for trophies.
Sadly, humans don't have a great track record when it comes to protecting new species. History is full of stories about exploitation and extinction.
It's true, and Bigfoot, with its legendary status, would be especially at risk. The potential for greed, sensationalism, and conflict is very real.
So it's a real dilemma, a double-edged sword, amazing scientific progress on one side, and the risk of harming these creatures and their way of life on the other.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to talk about these ethical issues. We need to be ready as a society to deal with what would happen if we found Bigfoot.
We need to ask ourselves some tough questions. If we find them, what are we obligated to do? How do we balance scientific curiosity with the need to protect them?
Right. Do we try to bring them into our world and risk their safety and maybe disrupt their culture? Or do we leave them alone, respect their right to exist, even if it means giving up potential scientific knowledge?
It's a big responsibility for sure, and it makes you realize that finding Bigfoot isn't just about the thrill of discovery. It's about dealing with the consequences and making choices that show our values and our humanity.
I think you put that perfectly. Finding Bigfoot wouldn't just be about learning more about nature. It would be about learning more about ourselves, our place in the world, and our duty to protect all living things.
It's a reminder that we're all connected humans and Bigfoot. We share this planet, and what we do affects everyone.
And that's what makes this conversation so important. It's not just about Bigfoot, it's about how we as humans choose to live in the world and the choices we make for the future.
It's about finding a way to live together, to respect all forms of life, and to recognize that our actions have big and lasting effects.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, while we're looking for Bigfoot, we're also looking for a way to live in harmony with nature, to rediscover our sense of wonder, and to find a path to a future where humans and all creatures can thrive.
You've given me a lot to think about. This whole deep dive has been amazing, full of surprises, mind-blowing discoveries, and questions that make you really think.
It's been great exploring these ideas with you, and I hope everyone listening has enjoyed this deep dive as much as we have.
I'm sure they have. We've
Like,
covered so much, from the history of Bigfoot to the latest scientific research, and even those mind-bending interdimensional theories.
we've looked at the evidence, the mysteries, the arguments, and the ethical questions of this enduring enigma.
And through it all, we've been reminded of the power of curiosity, the importance of being open-minded, and the sheer wonder of a world that still has so many secrets to uncover.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with one last thought. The search for Bigfoot is really a search for something bigger than ourselves.
It's a search for connection, for meaning, and for a sense of wonder that reminds us the world is full of possibilities even when we face the unknown.
And who knows, maybe someday we'll finally see that elusive creature standing tall in the moonlight, a symbol of the enduring power of mystery and the endless possibilities of discovery.
Until then, keep your eyes open, your minds sharp, and your sense of wonder alive. The search continues.